before going towards the sustainability, I think it's important to understand why MediPIET is important. MediPIET is a complex project, has plenty of technical, political, economical, countries' needs, institutions that are participating in the implementation, and all of you have a role in each one of these topics. There is the health security and risk management, there is the political relationship with the neighborhood, there is cooperation and development and the coordination between countries that are not European Union, there is technical support from the ECDC, there is the country needs and country views, and there is the implementer. And I would like them, from the point of view, which is one of their areas of interest, to answer the question, what is the added value you see in MediPIET to be so strongly supported? Who wants to start? Just 1 minute for each one of you.
I will start, so then I shut up. Yes, for us it's of course important. First, we support MediPIET since the beginning. There must be a reason, otherwise we would not have done it. Of course, for us, the objective of our program, I mentioned that already on Monday, we are security-oriented. Hard security, organized crime, fight against terrorism, protection of critical infrastructures and things like that. So what does that have to do with MediPIET? What we are doing is not reacting to crisis, we are trying to prepare, to help our neighbors to prepare themselves in case something unpleasant arrives. Of natural origin, criminal origin, like terrorist attacks or whatever, or organized crime, traffic of people, of human beings, etc., etc. Trying to manage also all the issues linked to migrations, the side effects of migrations, which is very often, by the way, also linked to human trafficking. So critical infrastructure protection, etc. Why is MediPIET important for us? Because it is a structural project which gives structure to the neighborhood of the EU, and this means that it helps the countries of the neighborhood to be prepared in case something happens, mainly in the biological field, of course, because this is the most tricky one. The RN part of attacks is much more under control. The chemical one is much better under control. The biological one is much more challenging for countries and for decision makers and for those who have to defend the population. In that sense, for us, MediPIET is a structural preparedness. And that's why we are interested that it exists and that it continues.
Thank you very much. Risk management, Frank?
Yes, in 60 seconds.
Please.
In 60 seconds, we have, I think, the need to be able to, in the EU, to manage with all the partners around the table based on good risk assessments. We have come very far already with help of ECDC and with help of the institutes in the EU, but the threats are global. We have also to be able to tackle the threats with the partners, at least around the Mediterranean, in our direct neighborhood policy files. And there we miss one important component, is that in the EU, we sit around the table also with the managers, the ministries of health mostly, who will be able to then adjust the funds or provide the decision to be taken. What we don't have yet is in this neighborhood policy area, the equivalent colleagues to sit around the table, the ministries of health. So long term, we have also to think, but the bases have been laid already now with all of your work in this. So in the right direction, the second step still will need to come in the years to come.
We'll go into that deeply when we talk about the long-term future. From the political point of view, relationship with these countries, well, why is MediPIET of interest?
Well, not the political point of view, but at least I will give you my thoughts on this. I have to tell you that this is a new file for me, because I also work for the European Commission, like my two colleagues sitting next to me. The Directorate General I work for has not been directly involved in the implementation of this project. So I'm a bit also discovering what it is about. But to answer your question, I think on the relevance of MediPIET, for me, it goes without any question that the relevance is there. Just to elaborate more on this, the Directorate General I work for, its mission is to design and deliver cooperation and financial assistance that goes with it to our neighbors. And actually, all 18 countries which are currently part of MediPIET are in our geographical remit. We have 23 clients, if I may say so. So all 18 countries in MediPIET are part of a geographical remit. And as I said, the relevance is there because in this group of 23 countries, we have on the one hand what we call the enlargement countries, which is to say the non-EU Western Balkans countries plus Turkey. And we actually have a cooperation with those countries which is based on the adoption of the EU acquis by those countries, and it's divided by thematic chapters. And one of these chapters is on consumer and health protection. So it's there, it's in our policy framework for enlargement countries, and the same goes for what we call the neighborhood countries, so what a normal person would call MENA region and countries towards the east of Europe. And for this neighborhood, we have a European neighborhood policy which has 3 main priorities. 1 is economic development, 2 migration, 3 security. And under the security, which is being given more prominence now in our cooperation with our neighbors, we have health security, which is clearly identified. So in terms of policy coherence, there is no doubt that MediPIET, for me, is fully in line with the EU policy frameworks, because we have 2, that we have with those countries.
Okay, thank you very much. Technical point of view, what is adding MediPIET to the region?
Okay. Thank you. If you allow, I will give 2 answers. One is very informal and very personal, but I think one I share with everyone, hopefully in this room. And that has to do with us being public health professionals. And being a public health professional is, in a way, a lifetime commitment. So it's a lifetime commitment for a higher purpose, and that is protecting the public, protecting the population, and I think for every public health professional, doing whatever we can do for that. And for that, I think that MediPIET is a really, really important project. That's the informal one. And I'm sure that this is also shared by my colleagues at home. The formal one is related to ECDC and our mandate. And we have a mandate to protect the EU countries against communicable diseases. And of course, the same way as within the EU, all countries are benefiting from having everyone doing well. So within the EU, we are putting emphasis on the weaker parts of it, because we know that this benefits all. And this is just an extension here that there is, I think, a legitimate mandate interest from ECDC and the European Union to also have strong neighbors. Because with strong neighbors, we can both meet our personal public health professional, but it's also protecting all. And as you said, Isabel, before, having an FATP, it's really based on science, it's based on evidence, and we know that this is one of the best ways of supporting public health.
Thank you, and this is very much aligned with IHR. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
What about the countries? What is the added value, not at country level, but at regional level? What do you feel from a country perspective?
From country perspective, especially I tend to say from the Black Sea countries region more, it's because, you know, each of our country can to organize some FATP modules inside in the country. But MediPIET give us possibility to networking, give us possibility to working together, not just to inside and build our new generation of epidemiologists, but be involved in the international activities, especially European Union activities. It's our connections with the European Union institutions, and for my view, it's our, one of the major what can give us MediPIET.
Thank you very much. I like at the end the word networking arised. That's a key one for me. Isabel, it's just not only the implementer, it's also the perception of a country which is relating with the beneficiaries of MediPIET for surveillance, outbreak investigation, risk assessment, risk management, etc.
We have the view of a public health institution, and why is important this network and this program? Well, it is important because FTP program is one of the main goals of a public health institution. And we need to, through this program, we can empower our public health institutions, since they are the only one providing public health expertise, health protection, prevention, control diseases, and we're having and gathering the best scientific and technical capacity to provide the ministries of health, the government, and the region with the best expertise to deal with different threats like environmental, chemical, biological, or why not natural health. This is a kind of remembering the importance of the public health institution in dealing with all these threats.
Okay, thank you very much. So, MediPIET is an important project for everybody. It seems so. So now, the next question is, what are you going to do for keeping this important project going on? And most important, this is just part of the health security, just part of the risk management, just part of the risk assessment. It's just part of the whole thing we need. We need many other issues. We need labs, we need the management itself, as Frank mentioned before. How do you see the future of MediPIET related with other projects? And what do you propose as a potential mean for assuring the sustainability of MediPIET? 3 minutes this time. Who starts? Carl? Carl first.
Okay. Allow me to be dreaming and visionary, and I'm now maybe taking off my official ECDC hat and looking a little bit longer in the future. I think if, say, that we are looking 5-10 years ahead, you have proposed a 10-year extension. By the way, we had before the break on the external evaluation, and I had some views on the looking past, but on the recommendations, I share a lot of what you are saying. I would like to see, and when I in some years will retire, that there is also in this region, the same way as in the EU now, integrated networks, where the training network is integrated in other networks related to surveillance, related to preparedness, related to the various diseases, a little bit like we are having the network within the EU. And that would take care of MediPIET just being a single point. When we are looking more specifically on the MediPIET, I totally agree with Isabel and several others that we need to continue to build and improve the cascading. I said before that for us in the EU, this is a model that we are trying to apply in the EU, but I think this is a unique feature in an FTP that is really built into this. And this is a strength that should be. So I would then see either national FTPs in many countries or at least a system for cascading. For the role of ECDC, I would hope that through discussions with colleagues in DGNIR or otherwise, that we would have the funding and possibility to have sufficient staff to continue to work closely together with this networking. I would really like to see a closer link between MediPIET and EPIET youth, and that while keeping the identity. So I think if we are talking about networking, I see possibilities of economy of scale, because now a lot of things are duplicated, but also the importance of keeping a regional ownership. I think, and this is also my own personal views, that there are possibilities when it comes to the fellows. I could, for example, imagine in the future that there is a common introductory course for MediPIET and EPIET, and then the specific modules would be network specific, possibly with a cross participation, because I could imagine a lot of EPIET fellows would like to participate in a MediPIET module and maybe the same way. Science, I think what you already said, Isabel, I think bringing together the annual scientific conference.
That's because he likes EPIET and MediPIET fellows to collaborate.
Yes. I think we should try to bring the annual scientific conference and SCIDE closely together, because I think SCIDE would benefit from your views and vice versa. But also among the facilitators across participation. So I would like to see many of you sitting in the room here to come and be facilitators and trainers in the EPIET and vice versa. We were talking about previously networking, and you saw MediPIET as an informal network. I disagree on that. I think MediPIET is a very formal network because it has clear endorsement from each of the ministries of health. And I think we need to keep that while at the same time building on communities of practice. And I think the community of practice should not only be MediPIET, that should be MediPIET, EPIET, UFEM, because we are all in the same. So we would need to find those things. And finally, it has been mentioned here on risk management. This is also nothing, is neither in my or our mandate, but the same way as within the EU, there are links between risk assessment, risk management, including with simulation exercises, etc. I think it would be a strength for this region to have such kind of networks as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And in fact, many of the things you mentioned may help the sustainability in the future because costs will be very much reduced, as is what demanded by the evaluation. So, but the people who really know about budgets and money is probably these three guys over here. I'm not talking about the ECDC, the European Union funding. I'm talking about options for funding, you know, much more than we do about these issues. So, any of you? Yeah, Stefan, please.
Yeah, on your question, which is about sustainability for MediPIET, I would see two critical factors. One is indeed sustained funding, no matter where the funding comes from, but there must be sustained funding for the initiative. And second is ownership. When it comes to funding, and without annoying you with all the nitty-gritties of how the European Commission works, but there are different funding streams. And as far as I'm concerned, my Directorate General is managing two financial instruments which are specifically designed for the cooperation with our 23 neighbors. As I said, it's not little money. For 2014-2020, it's 27 billion euros for 23 countries over 7 years. So we have to cover many different areas, but it's quite a huge amount of money, and the needs are also...
Please write it down in the summary of the session.
Yeah. The important thing here is that this is what we call programmable money. It is to say, in layman language, we cannot wake up one day and say tomorrow we will make a funding decision for a new project. This is not possible with these financial instruments. Actually, we work on the basis of multi-annual programming, documents defining priorities for countries, for regions, with indicative envelopes, and we prepare and approve new projects and funding decision, financing decision, on an annual basis. And typically it would take around 1 year from the first initial discussions, which is actually what we are having now with my colleagues around the table, and a final decision. So this we have to keep it in mind, and the fact that there will be a sort of funding, bridge funding for next year is fine, because as far as we are concerned, for next year there will be no opportunity to fund MediPIET, and the next window of opportunity would be 2019, and this is in a way excellent, because in the coming weeks we will continue discussing with the CDC, DG Santé, DG DEFCO as well, to assess what could be done in the best possible manner. So this is about funding. The second point for me, which is important for sustainability, that's ownership. And I think that here we really we need to have an institutional entity or a group of institutional entities that can really lead MediPIET. And this leader should have, in a way, vested interest. Sometimes vested interest can be good, because it means that beyond the EU funding, the leading entity or the leading entities will continue working on that after the funding had come to an end. I read somewhere that there was an idea about setting up a foundation, a MediPIET foundation. Why not? As long as it is not an empty shell and just created to receive ad hoc funding from the Commission. So there must be part of this foundation entities, as I said, that have a vested interest in MediPIET. Maybe a bigger role for ECDC. This is something we could discuss, or we should discuss, definitely, in my view, bearing in mind that in the cooperation with our neighbors, what I see is that EU agencies, like ECDC, but there are so many other EU agencies, like Frontex on border management, Europol on police, and so many other agencies. So these agencies tend to have a bigger role in our cooperation with our neighbors. So the trend is there. There are some limitations, legal and financial limitations, but there is a certain trend that should or could lead us to give a bigger role to ECDC to be discussed. And still on, but I'm coming back also on ownership. I would prefer that the EU does not finance MediPIET in full, but that MediPIET is a shared endeavor. So the EU could finance MediPIET, but there should be also funding streams from other sources, and this would be important for sustainability.
Thank you very much, Stefan. I think he put a challenge for countries on the table. We need to create or to find a common body for representing MediPIET countries for acceding to these funds. And I have a question: who can influence the prioritization you will do for the neighborhood countries? You mentioned that there is a need for prioritizing topics. Who has a capacity for influencing that prioritization?
Actually, I think the answer to this question is positive, because, as I said earlier, I think health security and MediPIET, this is in line with our policy frameworks. I think this is also in line with the programming of our financial assistance with not those countries, but the three regions in Neighborhood East, Neighborhood South, and Neighborhood and Enlargement region. So I think the answer is already yes to this question. What is on the table now is to have internal discussions on prioritizing on which projects we should put the money for, not for next year, but in 2019, as far as we are concerned.
My question, in fact, was basically, do you consult countries before establishing your potential priorities?
Absolutely, yes. When we have a multi-annual programming document with any country in the room. This is a result of a discussion and an agreement between the EU and that country on priorities, and except the financial envelope, which comes from the EU, but on the thematic priorities, on which areas to cooperate, this is a result of a discussion and an agreement.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry for pushing you that much. Eddie, Frank?
Just to add what Stefan said is important. This means that the ball is also on your side. The lobbying is not to be done so much on the Commission, but it's that you countries at a certain moment have to put security, health-related security, MediPIET, in their priority. So the discussions you countries have with our delegations, our representations in your countries, have also to channel MediPIET, I would say, through these discussions. This is one thing. For the second thing, and I think Stefan has nearly said everything, it is crystal clear that for the EU, since now several number of years, but it's still very acute, that the security is an important and increasing topic. Unfortunately, I would say, it is an increasing topic, but it is what it is because the world is what it is. And where we are coming from, in fact, is development aid, classical development aid. If you go 10 years back, nobody spoke so much about security in development aid. Nowadays, it has become a priority. We speak even about the nexus priority development, because doing development without having a secured situation in a country is nearly impossible, but vice versa. You cannot have security if you don't help the countries to develop and to invest into development. So let's say the political message is there, and that's why also our colleagues from the neighborhood increase their involvement in security aspects. I mean, you know all the neighborhood we have around the Mediterranean. I don't need to make a big speech about that. And we, of course, in our program, which is not only neighborhood oriented, we work with the neighborhood, but we have also demands to work outside the neighborhood, because risks of all type also exist elsewhere around the world. If you go for Africa, for example, you have plenty of regions, the whole of Africa, Sahel, which are not typically in the neighborhood, which are burning regions. And then if you go to other places like Afghanistan and Central Asia, Southeast Asia, etc., you have migrant problems, you have plenty of difficulties which emerge here and there. So East Africa, as I just mentioned. So we have also then, DEFCO, ICSP, to answer to these demands. So we are rather happy to see that when our colleagues from the neighborhood and the enlargement intervene more at the security level, it gives us the opportunity also to project ourselves elsewhere, because unfortunately the demand is big.
Thank you very much, but still the cooperation between both DGs is important. Frank, please.
Well, I'm the weak and small directorate general representative here around the table. We only have 2 billion over the budget cycle of 8 years. And with the 2 billion euros, we fund 5 agencies: the Medicines Agency, of course, the ECDC, the Food Safety Authority, the CPVO, the Plant Variety Office, a part of ECHA in Finland, and then the health program also. So our strength is not financially. That's understood. Plus we have a geographic limitation. We can only look upon the 28 EU member states and some countries for specific reasons, like the funding activities in the health program, for associated agreements in this program. So Serbia and Moldova, I'm sure, can benefit from some of these activities in the joint actions, but that's very, very limited. So our action is not there. Our action is policy. That's where our strength lies, because I think there's a lot of attention to health, because we as an individual have interest in health, because also it's a big chunk of the security issue. The health security is a big constituent there. And I think that's probably a much bigger influence that we can exercise. Within the EU, we have the decision on serious cross-border threats to health that forces us basically in two ways. One is to prevent and detect and communicate and deal with serious cross-border threats. And second, to prepare for these aspects and to do whatever is necessary so that we are ready. It's not much different from the international health regulation. It's also all hazard approach. It's also emphasizing preparedness. Just that we have a different tool. We have a different tool to report on preparedness, because when we report, we look all 27 at the report of the 28th. And we have a different tool to report a threat, because that report goes to all 28. We report so that we know all that the other country has something happening. So if we have hepatitis A in man having sex with man in a particular environment in the EU, we saw it budgeting a few weeks later in one country, 2 weeks later in another country, so we had the report chain. Our strength lies, as I said, in this legal mechanism, because towards our friends and colleagues in enlargement countries, we can therefore exercise some strength to say, well, I mean, your priorities are to adopt the acquis and to deal with what we state as these priorities, which is, I repeat, 1082, the decision on serious cross-border threat to health and dealing with these threats, but also on the new priorities, antimicrobial resistance. It's a big threat for us, and it's most likely also a big threat for all of our neighbors. And therefore, we put that extremely high on the political agenda. We do the same, and that together with all the ministers, the council around the EU, to put that on the agenda, such as avian influenza, such as vaccine preventable diseases. We have ourselves big issues, partly also because we don't have the vaccines anymore, partly because we're lacking some monovalent antigenic response to measles. We don't have a measles vaccine anymore. We don't have botulinum antitoxin anymore. And I'm sure that many of you are suffering with the same issues. So we put those on the table. And how can we then deal with the processes? Well, we can fund, we can ask, we can input to the World Health Organization, but that's a one-way mechanism where a lot of partners are in. We prefer, therefore, to sit around the table with the colleagues here, at this table, and to say these are the priorities for Santé and in our neighboring, in order to help us better secure, having better health security and security for ourselves and our neighbors. These are the priorities that we would really like to work on. Finally, we also have the individual dialogue with each and every one of you. We have them towards the enlargement country in a very formal process. And we have the same dialogue with you around the table in regular coordination meetings with you, where the same message is being aired. And then we have also 4 member states here around the table. We tell you the same story, Fernando. I mean, yeah. And we agree on these priorities jointly. We consult with you and we ask you, I mean, should we not raise this priority and make it so that we gearing more attention to this or that area? And so we close the loop there. It's not that we're working solely on ourselves on these priorities. We consult largely, we advise where we can, and that's where I think we close the loop by saying, well, yes, training for such a field epidemiology training program is helping us a lot to answer our legal priorities. That's one of our key occupations.
Thank you very much. I think it touched an important point. MediPIET is training people, is creating capacities for responding, but it's true that if it is not included in the policy strategy, it's going to be a problem, and that has to be done obviously at EU level, but at country level, with or without the support of the EU. That's another question. If you don't mind, I will go first to Isabel and then to Dr. Pata, because right after Dr. Pata, I will want to ask you as countries to contribute to Dr. Pata's position, okay? So as an EU country, the implementer, how do you see the future of MediPIET? What do you think should be the next steps to be done by everybody together to get the future, a long-term sustainability?
Yes, as a country and public health institution, we have sharing problems. We can share a lot of problems to keep an FTP program. We are dealing with the same. For example, financial events, political priorities, available competent resources, and so on. So keeping an FTP program is not an easy issue. But anyway, what we are what we are doing to maintain and to continue with these FTP programs in our experience and in the experience of other European countries, I have seen that the degree of involvement of the public health institution is one key issue. This is maybe one of the most important issues because public health experts are usually included in the public health institutions, and they are maybe the ones that can be ahead of expecting problems that can countries. So the involvement of the public health institution is one of the most important things. Another thing is to introduce, for example, we have mentioned, and it will be included in the same key issue, to include the cascade activities is another important thing to keep alive and to keep working an FTP program. I think that also the official commitment of the Ministry of Health is one important issue, since we will have the political commitment to pursue this FTP program and this core competence of a public health institution. And I think another important, very important issue is the multisectoriality. We need to share our concern regarding the public health protection and the threats that we can face in different environments, is to have a strong and close relation with committees or whatever, with other ministries in the national government. For example, I mean the ministries of interior, the ministers of social policies, the environmental ministries, defense, agriculture, and so on. I think this is really important, public health institution to be involved in these committees, in this at the highest level we can reach, because we will be the expert to face when there is a threat. We will be the expert to face that threat. So, well, and with these receipts, I think that we can be protected from ups and downs from political. You know, we're always dealing with these ups and downs. So if we achieve to maintain a strong network, if we achieve to be represented in different national core committees, and multi-sectoral committees, I think is less likely that FTP program, that the core competencies of the public health institution in training to be finished. So this is my view.
Thank you very much. Now is the turn of Dr. Bada, but I would like to make an extra question to you. It was mentioned that one of the priorities for you is the security, and that's true, and I think it's a key point, not only for the EU, for most of the country right now. But so far, MediPIET has been beneficiating of this EU priority. How does this EU priority, apart of benefiting, because we get money from that, how much this EU priority is fitting with countries' priorities?
Yeah, first of all, I want to say in experience of my country, our Siberian initiatives in the country and Siberian Council. We are a very active member of Siberian Council in the country, and even from the public health, it's our exceptional. We are 2 representatives from, even not from the Ministry of Health, but from our Institute of National Center for Disease Control. We are 2 representatives in National Council. It means to, on this view, to in connection with threats reduction, it's very important on the country's view too. At least what I knew is this experience from my country. Another what I just to say about a few words about sustainability of the project. We during the TCF meeting and then are talking about this, and I think all countries are ready to this commitment, to the country's commitment, political commitment under the on the level of the ministries of health, at least to their contribution to the future of the MediPIET. And what beyond of these 2 years, I think of course it's one of the we must talking is inside on TCF meetings. I think it will be to create some international organization, some NGOs, what can support us on future sustainability of the program. Personally, we have this experience on the some Black Sea countries, and not just Black Sea countries, to organize some Silk Road diseases surveillance regional group. We have like this experience, and it can be, I think, we are thinking to organize something like this for MediPIET too. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, as you see, there are plenty of challenges. We have, there is a proposal already on the table to create a body, whatever kind of body, representing MediPIET countries for being a legal entity to access funds or to generate new funds. There is a challenge related with the position of the different ministries of health from the different countries to see what they want to do for MediPIET, how important it is. This is policy making, this is resource management. There is another issue about sustainability. I personally think that although IHR is going well, we as usually Ministry of Health is the one implementing the IHR in every country. But I think we are failing to make the rest of the sectors in our own countries to understand that IHR is not a Ministry of Health issue, it's a national issue, and we are failing on that in many occasions. I think there are challenges related with the how the different when we think about sustainability, the first thing we used to do is to turn our head towards these 3 people, and sometimes towards the ECDC also. Sustainability, money. But what you, as countries, can do, a part of what they can or want to do, regardless what they are able to the way they are able to support the MediPIET project, what the countries are able to do. Your turn, please.
Thank you, Fernando. You are great. Once again, I am Marko Milivojević from Serbia. I am national focal point for CBRN in COE initiative. Eddie knows me very well for many years because I am here from very beginning, and we are dealing with more than 60 projects, yeah, in past 8 years. So I will be again in line with what Eddie said. Eddie and I try to say to you for last 5 days something about security issue. For first 2 days, I will mention again. I will try to tell you something about fight against terrorism, something about migrants or refugees. We have some problems with that. And not only non-EU country, EU country have this problem too. So this is very important issue. So I'm from the very beginning in the process of negotiation of Serbia, because Serbia is EU candidate country with different DGs, and I will tell you something just to connect all these European Commission body in one place and MediPIET. And I think it will be perfect for you to just to understand in one example. We have in Serbia national team for CBRN. It was established in 2008 from different state bodies, okay? By the way, I'm the head of that team too. So we have a negotiation process with EU, with European Commission. What is differences between EU and European Commission? EU is EU and European Commission is bodyguard of EU, okay? And in this process, in chapter 24, negotiation, freedom, security, justice, we have some kind of obligation. If we want to be EU member, okay? We have to fulfill acquis communautaire. So in this subchapter, fight against terrorism, we have some issue to fulfill. To make decision as a country about strategy and action plan for the fight against terrorism. We are on the end of this process. And to establish CBRN action plans. So we already do that in this initiative, and this plan is totally in line with CBRN EU action plan. So now it's a little bit changing, this plan for a few weeks ago, and DG Home are responsible for that. So we have here DG DevCo, DG Home, and DG NEAR, okay, who are dealing with that issue. Just as example, I was a member of working group for writing strategy of the fight against terrorism, and I put one of the action in this strategy, in this action plan, was to use all knowledge from COE initiative. I put that as a member of a working group. So the outputs of this initiative for my country are very important, okay? And to go back to the Isabel presentation, I saw, because I am policeman, okay, I saw the crisis management as a main part of some future activity. And this is great idea, and how we can connect this with a lot of other issues. So crisis management will be very useful, and we will have comprehensive approach, let's say. If you find a way and time to write some SOPs, standard operative procedures, but not only for you guys as doctors, but for other guys, for policemen, for customs administration, okay? And we can use that SOPs as handbooks or something like this and use in real life, because sometimes we are dealing with a lot of problems. Through Serbia, we had a few millions of refugees, okay? They have some of them are ill or something, and we have to recognize that, and we have to know how to react on that way. So we must think about prevention, preparedness, detection, reaction or response, and after that about recovery as well. So it will be very useful if some of outcomes, it will be concrete action in crisis management, you write some kind of procedures, handbooks for the others, not only for the doctors, but for other people. Thank you.
So it's interesting that sustainability is not only money, it's also adapting the curriculum, it's also going towards the multi-sectorial approach. It's much more than only that. But he also added an extra problem. We want to do or create a new body, a common body for everybody, but we are seeing that there are different interests. There are many common things between all of us, but there are some differences. The acceding countries to the ECDC, to the EU, is not the same situation as they are facing the other countries. We will have to fit that also in the equation.
So, I have two points that I would like to share with you. The first one is about ownership. And we have already this discussion since day one about ownership. Ownership, we have it at two levels. Levels personal and institutional level. For me, I feel this ownership because I'm part of TCF, I'm supervisor, I'm participant, I'm facilitator. So at personal level, we are feeling this ownership. But still, we have to work about ownership felt by our institution. And here we have two kinds of ownership felt by the institution, passive or active. Passive, they let us coming to these conferences and workshops and models. So they sign decision travel to let us coming here. This is a passive way for our institution, for the ownership. But if we want to go to the future, 10, 20, 30, 40 years from now, we have to be more active in the ownership from our institutions. We need to have cotizations. Symbolic cotization can be, but when we think about cotization, it will be something secured. But here, we will face a problem, the political region and our political situation. Which foundation our countries will say, okay, I will make cotization for this institution. So we have to go to the past. Which one we can make cotization without any political issues. So this is about ownership. But when we think about ownership also, I will go to my second idea. It has to be linked to thinking regionally. And this was the idea when we have the first workshop to designate the working groups. Thinking regionally, also we have to have some knowledge, attitudes and practice. I have an outbreak in Lebanon. I have to have an attitude that this is very important for my neighbors, for you, for the others, and I have to tell them directly and not through WHO. So here also we have to develop core competences about thinking regionally. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think there is an important point that she touched, and it was touched also by the board. In fact, what you are talking about is about policy. It's assuring that your institution, your governments are assuring from the policy point of view the interest of the project. And I think that's a key point. We have 2 years to work on. 2 years, is it? Yes. 2 years.
Thank you very much, Fernando. I will give it back very fast. So it's a short comment. It's very hard to have a big comment following that, as she said almost everything. So what I wanted to refer was Isabel's presentation and the ownership matter, because yesterday it was quite shy announcement of the MediPIET alumni network. So we finally managed to elect our representatives, and there is going to be a network of alumni, of the fellows, of the graduated fellows. And we would also like to be included in the plans, and we would also like to own a part in the MediPIET 3. So this is a pledge to include us in your presentation, as we do believe that there is a lot that we can contribute with our experience and all the other things. And finally, what you said, it's not about what countries can do, it's also about what individuals can do, and we also need to stress that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think this is true. In fact, institutions are made of individuals. If individuals don't push in the right direction, the institutions won't push neither. I think that's a very important point. I think another key point is something we didn't talk very much about so far, but I ask the question is, how does the MediPIET relate with all the other projects and topics that have to be developed for MediPIET to be really meaningful? MediPIET without, for instance, MediLab Secure may not be as interesting. MediPIET without relationships and coordinations with other networks working in not the same but not far away areas in the region is not as meaningful. And I think those are key points we have to consider during this and the following discussions we will have for sustainability of MediPIET. More questions, more comments, more position from countries?
The links with others is de facto present. MediLab Secure, I was in the conference MediLab Secure some months ago. So other networks gone, also we were in the gone missions. So in de facto, links with other projects are present.
Yes, they are, in fact. Do we have to strengthen them? Do we have to include other? We have to think of that also. So if there is, we are already very much behind the schedule, so we are going to shorten this as much as we can. If there are no more comments from the audience, I would like to give just 20 seconds per person to give a last view of MediPIET's future. Just 15, 20 seconds, please. One by one.
Thank you. There's so much energy that we saw in the last 4 days ongoing that it's hard to say, well, the only one thing we're sure of is that there is a future. That is obvious. That is already one take home. We're all there to drive our health security, our capacity to deal with the threats, and to bring in this training component so that we can guarantee it and transmit it to the future. That's what we're all here for, and to do it better than before. We do it together. That's the other thing. That's the second big element, is that we're not alone. We have so many parties, and yes, we can bring in more, but we're lacking still a few maybe. Well, let's bring them on board. There's no problem. I think one big partner that we're missing is we're missing the management part in our health response. Not the ones who will help us find what the risk is and what to do with it, but the ones who actually say, well, we're going to do it. We're going to close this hotel because there is a Legionnaires, or we're going to purchase this new vaccine. The ones who have the national capacity, the money to put this forward. That is what we're missing. And I think we need to take care of bringing them slowly into the picture. We have 2 years to prepare that part, but it's very important that we think ahead of those. And for the last thing is we need them also in order to share formally the threats that we might recognize. Because that will be very difficult to do at your end, because you're going to be, well, in the open if you do it. You need the ministries to actually press the button and to say, well, we have a threat here and we need some help.
Thank you. Short 20 seconds. Good. Stefan, please.
Just a very quick word to tell you that I am a strong supporter of regional cooperation. because one, we have flexibility, differentiation, which are embedded in any regional project or initiative. It's a good way of addressing shared challenges, and we have one here. A good way of developing shared assessments, developing joint activities, joint actions, and I think this is the case here. Possibility of economies of scale. You invest in developing one activity and you implement that activity in several countries. And last, it's a good way to link up to addressing the, Eddie mentioned the development security nexus, but we also have in the field of security particularly the internal-external nexus. And I think regional cooperation can be extremely good to create this link between your challenges, our challenges, what you do and what we do in the EU in the best possible manner.
Thank you very much. Eddie, please.
In fact, I will be very short because my two colleagues have said a lot. No, I only can share what has been said, and I'm also a lover of cooperation, regional cooperation, etc. Tackling the issues we have to tackle alone is nearly a lost battle. So cooperation is absolutely essential. Learning from the others is also important, and helping the others is also important, because by helping the others you learn a lot. This is certainly one thing. To come back to the Medilab Secure and the other projects which originated from MediPIET South, I can tell you they will also continue. I discussed that also the other day in Lyon. It is clear that we will continue, and we will push that the cooperation, the coordination is a bit more visible and better, not only through individuals.
Thank you very much. Carl, please.
I will be even shorter.
Thank you.
We said a lot here. So I just want to say that I'm really looking forward to the next step. Because we are talking now a long time in the future, but I think we have some important homework in the next couple of months. So I'm excited also with ECDC to engage in discussion with Carlo Tercero and with TCF, how we should take on board a lot of ideas that has been presented in the external evaluation as recommendation, but also coming out from the good discussions here.
Thank you very much, Carl. Dr. Pata?
I'm very optimistic, but I just wish to, after some years to see really what the One Health concept will be on the action, and we will be together here on the MediPIET program with our veterinarian colleagues too.
Thank you very much. Isabel?
Really short, only 3 issues. We will continue learning by doing. We have learned a lot from our networking and our MediPIET project, so we need to improve, we need to learn more by doing, by sharing experiences, and being closer to countries. The second thing is that it brings into my mind is the multisectoriality. This is really important for our future. And the belief that the security, as you said, is a national issue. This is the things that I think we should keep in mind.
Thank you very much. So let me just make a short wrap-up of key points we were talking about today. I think, according to what was mentioned both by the board and by the audience, there is a near future assured. MediPIET will go on the following 2 years for sure, and that gives us room for preparing for the long-term future. The long-term future requires several things, many of them related with ownership by countries. You have to accept that policy is a key point within your countries for MediPIET to become an important issue, something that is worth to support. At the same time, there are options a part of what you have to offer. There are options mentioned by the engineer about potential future funding, but cannot be the EU the only supporter of MediPIET. It has to be the countries. We also mentioned the need for including management within the curriculum. The following 2 years, there's going to be an adaptation of the curriculum, of course, because the world is changing, our countries are changing, our needs are changing. Adapting the curriculum, including management, including multisectoriality, are key points for making MediPIET an attractive project or an attractive initiative for those policy makers. And I think, of course, the option of creating this body that was mentioned that may represent from the administrative point of view the interest of the MediPIET people, the MediPIET friends, the MediPIET countries, is a challenge, but it's probably one of the key points for accessing funds not only from the EU but from other potential sources. Thank you very much to everybody. Thank you very much, the board, for this very interesting roundtable. And I hope that all this is noted by the MediPIET implementers and by everybody and by the evaluators. And that this will be a history of success, not right now, which is already, but also in the future. Thank you very much.